To be able to welcome Mark Anthony Garrett to our conference. Um, he's an educational speaker who grew up in the tough inner city of Dayton, Ohio as a foster child and was later adopted. Throughout his childhood, he faced many hardships such as poverty, neglect, homelessness, abandonment, and abuse, both physical and sexual. At 14, he lost his adopted mother to cancer, dropped out of school, joined a gang, became addicted to drugs, and was in and out of juvenile jail. Although his surroundings were negative, Mark was encouraged by a teacher to never give up on life and to always strive for excellence. He knew he had to take his destiny into his own hands. After receiving guidance from influential mentors, Mark enrolled in college and majored in wildlife biology and went on to become a two-time U.S. Achievement Academy Award winner, recipient of the National Collegiate Minority Leadership Award, and received the highest honors given by his college, which were the President's and Trustees Awards. Mark also returned to college and earned a degree in entrepreneurship. With all the adversity in his life, this experience inspired him to dedicate his life to helping troubled youth and adults overcome the negative challenges within their own lives and discover that they have greatness within them. Mark is extremely passionate about helping raise the mental consciousness of people all across the nation and abroad. And Mark has a short video he wants us to share, and then we will get to hear from him.
I never imagined that a teacher could be such a blessing in my life. Teachers have the ability to change the world, one child at a time. I am 100% convinced that my teacher helped save my life. There she is. How are you? Good to see you. So good to see you. Miss Ritchie's desk sat about right here. Her desk was right here. And she would come from behind her desk, and this was her kingdom. This is where it all transpired. This is where she taught the disadvantaged kids, the special needs kids, to be great. Well, my first memory was actually having my dad bring me into the school, and my dad brings me into the school, and we walk in, and we're in this hallway, and we look to the right, and there's Miss Ritchie standing there. And we look at each other for probably 3 to 4 seconds. She comes up and she says, "May I help you?" And she looks down at me and she asks my dad, "Who is this handsome young man?" I was a challenging student in a sense that I grew up in the foster care system. I was an abused kid, very introverted. So I was one of those special needs kids. I was a special ed kid. And I was just a kid who needed a lot of attention.
The fact that I taught kids and I knew he had problems, it really meant something to me.
You know, during those times, I had a lot of problems at home, and I was carrying a lot of emotional baggage.
He spent quite a bit of time with his head on his lap, on the desk.
Miss Ritchie would come by and just kind of put her hand on my back and rub my back and tell me everything was going to be okay. But the most important thing that I remember that she told me was that one day I would grow up and I would be significant.
And it took a while for that to change.
Because I didn't really believe that I was like other kids. I didn't believe that I could achieve like other kids. But the one thing that Miss Ritchie did for me was give me a sense of hope. Give me a sense that I could be more than I ever thought I could be. And I remember she said that in this classroom, in this space, it's our kingdom. And in the kingdom, you have kings, you have queens, and kings and queens are treated like royalty. And so she said every time we would come into class, we had to act like we were royalty, which in our mind, we thought that was kind of crazy. But what she was doing was really building our self-esteem.
Well, he got confident. he raised his head, and we were making progress. You know, he could see that he was making progress, and he responded to me.
I don't know where I would have been if Miss Ritchie weren't in my life. Probably in jail, probably maybe dead. And just having her in my life, when I think about it now, it's just impactful, because you never know the impact someone could have in your life until you finally realize just what they were able to do for you. So I don't know where I'd be.
I would say I gained as much as he did, because it was like a little miracle. She gave me that for Christmas.
Okay, I was wondering if she painted that, but she didn't paint it. She just gave it to you for Christmas. She was the first person who told me that I was significant. And for a little kid who had never been told that before, to have someone generally tell you that you're significant, that was so life-changing for me. And it just put me on a whole different course emotionally and also mentally and educationally. The impact Miss Ritchie had on my life has been absolutely phenomenal. Because of what she did for me, I became a professional speaker and trainer who travels across the nation speaking to tens of thousands of people within school systems, foster care agencies, and corporations. Miss Ritchie is my inspiration.
It's one of my highlights in my life, you know. It really is. I've always been for the underdog.
Yeah, it's because I really appreciate what you did.
Yeah.
And just the whole, your whole life of service and believing in kids like me. I don't know what else to say. It's just amazing, you know?
It is.
I would tell every teacher out there to never, ever give up. Because you just never know. You never know the impact you're making in a kid's life. You never know that kid that you may think can't achieve, or you may think can't make it, could be the very one through what it is that you do. They could go out there and change the world. So I would tell every teacher to think big. I will tell every teacher to never give up on any kid, and to truly understand that they are heroes. Because in my opinion, teachers are heroes.
Be nice to them. You know, they have no faith in themselves. And if you just smile at them, or, give them a boost now and then, that would be so helpful. I'm proud of him. I really am. He's kept touch, and he's done a lot for me to remember the good times, and that, you did mean something to somebody.
When I think about what she did for me, I don't know how I could ever repay her. I don't know the words to say, except I love you. And I sincerely mean that.
I love him because he succeeded. I do.
You are my hero.
Oh. Bless your heart. You did. You turned out wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And I'm going to go to the list.
Okay, everyone, I am now sharing my screen here, so let's see what happens here. Okay, and let me get my PowerPoint up here. All right. It's funny, every time I see that video, I get very, very emotional. I don't know why, but I just want to say thank you to everyone. I want to welcome everybody to this conference, and I want to thank you for what it is you do. And what I mean by that is I am the recipient of a GED. I'm a recipient of being instructed by individuals like you. And because of people like you, I am still breathing, I am still here, I am still existing, and I'm thriving. because you people believed in someone like me when I could not believe in myself. So I just wanted to kind of put that disclaimer out there and give you a thanks before we get started. But as I was thinking about the topic today, I was thinking about my experience, being an 8th grade dropout, foster care, the things that I've went through in my life, gangs, violence, living in the hood, the whole 9 yards. I had to think about the influential people in my life, like my 3rd grade special education teacher, like my GED instructor or adult instructor, Mrs. Kavanaugh, who pushed me when I didn't want to be pushed, who kind of peeled back the onion in my life and told me what was possible, gave me a vision into what I call never-ending possibilities. So when I thought about that, I thought about all of you, and I thought about what word or what action could I explain that would kind of pull all of you guys into one category. And I thought about the word hero, because when you think about a hero, you think of someone kind of flying in, saving the day. That's what you guys do every single day. Every time you show up to inspire those students, you're kind of like a hero. So I wanted to kind of talk about the power of a hero and impacting life through service excellence, leadership, dynamic connections, and outstanding teamwork. And so I want you to also know that this whole COVID event that's going on right now, this COVID-19 pandemic that has turned the world upside down, and we're trying to do more Zooms now. We're trying to figure out how do we do this thing called education under these conditions. But I want to thank you also for your resiliency, because somehow we're finding a way to get it done. Because at the end of the day, for what it is we do, results matter. It's all about the results. It's all about how many people can we get from where they are to the apex of their greatness. And so I want you to know, whether you're going through some arduous times right now, which I'm sure you are, or whether you're going through some things that maybe in your personal life, I want you to know this. For those who believe in something bigger than them, I want you to realize that the best is yet to come. That the best is yet to come. It's right around the corner. So I want everyone just to kind of stick tight, keep fighting, keep pushing, because there are people, as the chancellor said, 800,000 individuals who don't have their high school equivalent. So there are thousands of people out there who need what it is we do. But just know that the best is yet to come. When I thought about what happened to me in my life, I think about the word hope. And hope means 2 things. One, it means helping other people excel. And that's what we do in adult education. We help other people excel. And the other meaning for hope is helping one person every day. Every day that you show up to work, every day that you are behind that computer, or you're live with someone and you're giving them instruction and motivation and inspiration, you're reshifting destiny. And I want you to know that you're bringing a lot of people hope. When I think about Miss Kavanaugh, well, she's no longer with us. But when I think about what she did for me, as I said in that classroom that I hated, my GED experience was not pleasant. It wasn't fun, but it was worth it. And that's the thing I want you to realize. So she gave me a lot of hope. And so, when I kind of look at OAACE's mission, is to represent and serve the providers of adult education in Ohio, which I think is a great mission. But what Randy Gardner, the chancellor, he said something that really sparked me. He said the status quo is not good enough. And simply meaning that in what it is that we do, just going through the motions isn't good enough. And what it is we do, because we have the power to shift and change people's lives, we must always rise above the status quo, and we must always strive for excellence. Excellence trumps everything. When you are excellent in what you do, whether you're perfect at it or not, because this is not about perfection, but this is about inflection, the inflection of our life, our love, our dedication to what it is we do. It means the world to those that we serve, and it definitely means the world to me, because I benefited from what it is that you do. I benefited from your belief in the students. I benefited from your diligence and your resiliency. And I forever thank you for that. So when we think about heroes, we kind of think about these type of heroes: the Hulk, Thor, the Thing, Spider-Man, and these are great heroes. But I want to kind of shift that aside, and I want you to kind of look at yourself as the hero. And I want you to get excited, because I'm excited, because when I was asked to do this is my 2nd time. I think the first time was about 4 or 5 years ago at a live event. But when I was asked to come and speak before you again, I got really excited, because I remember the faces. I remember the response. I remember people coming up afterwards and saying, thank you for reminding me of why I do what I do. And I know that in adult education, sometimes it can be a thankless job. Sometimes you don't get the attaboys that you deserve. But I want you to know that what you do, it matters. That everything you do, your existence, your presence, it matters. And I want to ask everybody a question. I ask this to probably every group that I speak to. And the question is this. I want you to take a moment and just imagine if you personally, what if you ceased to exist? What if you weren't here? What if you were never born? How different would the world be without your presence? How different would the lives of the individuals that you have impacted or have yet to impact, how different would their life be if you weren't here? And people always get stumped by that question because they're like, I never thought about that. Well, I want you to think about it today. And the reason I want you to think about it today is the little black kid that came from Dayton, Ohio, the little kid that grew up in foster care, the little kid who was physically, mentally, sexually abused, the kid that they said would never make it, the kid who, was shuffled around to different foster homes, who dropped out of school in the 8th grade, the kid who had been locked up in juvenile, stole cars, was in gangs, the kid that contemplated suicide at 18 is sitting before you today at 52 when the world said that I would never make it. When the world said that a kid like you, whose mama didn't want you, who you don't know your real dad, your foster parents are too old, you're not very smart in school, you stutter, you're getting bullied all the time, you live in the hood, you're not going to make it, kid. That's what society said. But Miss Ritchie, that 3rd grade teacher, Miss Kavanaugh, my adult education instructor, those were 2 constants in my life, 2 individuals who believed in the unseen. Because if you knew me back then, if you knew me as a little kid, I was an angry kid. I was a depressed kid. I was an angry teenager. I was a gang member. I mean, I was probably one of those kids that probably would have made you uncomfortable. But they saw beyond that. And they saw beyond the trauma. They saw beyond the foster care, beyond all of that. And they saw the man that sits here today. Even though I couldn't see it back then, they could see potential. And everything that we do was all about the potential. We are sowing into the lives of others to unlock their potential. We may not see it, we may not feel it, but we know that it's there. It's like that old commercial back in the 70s and 80s, Ragu is in there. Everything we need to be great is locked up inside of us. And when we are excited about what we do and we bring that excitement, our students are going to feel it because they pick up on energy. It's all about the energy. And so when you're excited about what you do, it could change the landscape of somebody's life forever. How do I know? Because it changed mine. So what I'm going to ask you to do just for a moment is I just want you to take a leap of faith. I want you to take that leap of faith. And when you take a leap of faith, Dr. King said something very interesting. He said, faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase. See, when I stepped into that GED classroom, I didn't see what I am today. I didn't see the end road. All I saw was, here I am again in this classroom because I'm a failure. So a lot of times kids who come, not kids, but kids and individuals who come to you are coming at a deficit. They're coming like, I'm 35, I'm 42, I'm 60, I'm 80, or whatever the age may be, and I failed in my life. I didn't get this done. So they come with a deficit. But when you have faith and you have that energy and that excitement, and you let them know, as Ms. Kavanaugh would tell us all, I remember there's 13 of us in the classroom, and we all hated being there. I'm just being very honest and very real. And she said to us, she says, remember that you have the power to rewrite your narrative. You have the power to Picasso the rest of your life, all depending on what you do here. And we're like, what are you talking about? We're just here to get a GED. And she says, well, you know what GED stands for? And we're like, no. She says, well, I'm trying to think what she said. She says, GED, get excited daily. Yes, it was get excited daily, which means that every time we showed up, she says, when you bring different energy and you shift your energy and you get excited every day that you're here, it's not going to be as arduous. And we start adopting those beliefs. And before we knew it, we were accomplishing things that we never accomplished in school. We were accomplishing things we never accomplished in life because we had that instructor who had faith, who had not only faith in the process, but she had faith in all of us. And it made a tremendous difference, especially in my life. So as we go through this and what it is we do, I want you to kind of think outside the box. Because in today's world, especially with COVID going on, we can't, as the chancellor said, do the status quo. We have to be creative. We have to be different. Even in my business, even in my speaking business, doing Zoom sessions, I've never did so many Zoom sessions in my life. If I never do another Zoom session, I'll be perfectly fine. I love interaction. I love people, but I had to shift and I had to think outside the box.
And I said to myself, Mark Anthony, I know you're upset because you can't physically and tangibly touch people and be in front of big crowds like you used to. But if you can get behind a computer screen and still deliver the same passion, the same energy, the same esprit de corps, so to speak, then maybe you could be, continue having success in your life in the speaking arena. And it's been working out for me because I've just kind of thought outside the box and shifted my energy. And so when you kind of think about when you change your perception, you kind of change your reality. So what I've learned is that only two things will change in your life. Either something new comes into your life or something new comes out of you. To change how society views adult education, I believe we have to first change how we view ourselves and how we treat each other. Is all a matter of perception. And I remember going into the GED classroom, and Miss Kavanaugh, she was there, and she said, she says, what do you guys perceive? And we're like, what are you talking about? We just want to get this done. And she says, you have to have a different perception of this process. If you come in here angry and you come in here frustrated all the time and you come in with a negative attitude, because you're living that perception will eventually become your reality. And she began to talk to us about the self-fulfilling prophecy, and we had to see ourselves graduating. We had to see ourselves passing each of those modules, whether it was math, English, whatever. We had to see ourselves doing that. But she said we also had to feel it. She said, how would each of you feel if you had your GED right now? We're like, oh man, we'd be rocking. And she says, I want you to capture that emotion, and I want you to feel this. And she would take us through these exercises and to have us imagine what our life would be if we accomplish this. So she kind of rose the benchmark for us, and she put that carrot up on the top of the hill in our mind, and she helped us and held our hand every step of the way until we achieved it. So I'm a science guy. I'm a former wildlife guy. So in wildlife, it's all about the data. It's all about, how do we get this data? So I want to do a quick exercise, and here's what I'm going to do. Here is a box. And when you look at this box, what do you see? You see something that's three-dimensional. You see something that you can see through, and so on and so forth. And some people say, well, you know what, Mark Anthony, there's really nothing unique about that box. Just how society and some people believe that people who don't have their high school equivalent, that they're failures, that they're losers. That's their perception. But here's what I want you to do. As some of you may look at this box, you may think it's just a normal box, and it is. But it's something very different about this box if you look at it from a different vantage point, if you perceive it in a different way. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to focus on this first square right here. Okay, see that first square right there? And then I'm going to ask you to focus into the center of the square. And I want you to look into directly, and I want you to directly look into the center, and I want you to focus, and I want you to focus, and I want you to focus. And the more you focus on that box, the more you look at that box from a different vantage point and you concentrate, for some of you, the box will move. It will shift. It will go like this, and then it'll go like this. And you're like, oh my goodness, is that an optical illusion? And for some of you, it may take a little bit more time, okay? But the box will move. It will shift. The shifting in the box symbolizes the shift in consciousness in those that we are serving, in those students that are trying to figure out, can I really do this? And all we're looking for is that aha moment, the moment when there's a shift internally where they're like, I can do this. I will not quit at this. I can make this happen. And when you look at this, it's all about how we perceive, because when the 13 of us walked into that classroom, we were all in there looking at each other like we're all failures. Why are we here? We're all going to fail at this. It's not going to happen, until the energy was shifted by Miss Kavanaugh. And so this illustration symbolizes also how we perceive things in life, how we look at life, and how we look at people, and how we should never prejudge anyone based on the cover of their book. Because if you prejudge me, you probably would have been like, this kid's not going to make it, but here I am because of great people like you. So that's the first illustration. So for some of you who are saying, okay, is this guy Houdini? Is he an optical illusionist? What's going on here? Let me give you another one. Now, this one, all I want you to do is to count the number of F's that you see. So if you see an F, Frank, Frog, Fred, count it, but keep it to yourself. So if you're in a group, don't share it with anybody. If you're, by yourself, that's fine, but just kind of keep it to yourself, and let's see what happens. Here we go. I'm going to put it up for like maybe 3 or 4 seconds, and then I'm going to take it off. Here we go. I want you to count the number of F's that you see. I'll give you about 3 to 4 seconds. Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right, so we're back to the box. Now, on that illustration there, some of you probably saw 2 Fs. Some of you probably saw 3 Fs. Some of you saw 4. Some of you may have saw 5. Some of you may have saw 6. And some of you may have saw 7 or more. Now, I know that there's about 100 and some people in here, and people are like, wait a minute, no, there's no way that I could have saw 2 and some people saw 3. There's only one right answer. Technically, whatever you saw is correct because that is your perception. But what is the reality? The reality is no matter if you saw 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the true answer is 7. Now, I know some of you guys are like, oh, come on, Garrett, like, what are you serious? Like, really, dude? I mean, seriously? Here we go. Let me show you. So here's my cursor. Here's F number 1. Here's F number 2. Here's F number 3, F number 4, F number 5, F number 6, and F number 7. Now, am I giving this illustration to try to trick you or to say I'm smarter than you? Not at all. What I'm doing is to show you that what we see with these eyes isn't always the reality. When we are serving those individuals who society says are less than, or the society says can't make it, we have to have a bigger vision, understanding that the more we focus, the more we believe, the more we work with them and encourage them, locked up inside of them is the truth. We may have saw 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 Fs, but the true reality, it is 7. And 7 is the number of completion, okay? I believe that everything that we do, especially in this adult space, is all about inspiration. And Patanjali, I think he puts it best when he says that when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, he says that all your thoughts, they break their bonds. He says that your mind transcends limitations and that your consciousness will expand in every direction. And you find yourself in a new, great, and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents become alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. Another Miss Kavanaugh quote. And she had this quote up there, and we're looking at this quote every day, and we didn't understand what it meant. But what Patanjali is simply saying is that when you stand for something, when you understand what your purpose is in life, when you understand why you are here, and you understand that you're here for something bigger than you, all of a sudden, your mind, it thinks outside that box, it grows, and all of a sudden, everything you need to be successful, it shows up. So it's all about inspiration, and in everything we do with the people that we serve, it's all about inspiration. It's all about trying to inspire them to see something bigger than what they can physically see with their eyes. And I believe that we are more than just our titles. We do more than just adult education. In essence, we are lifesavers. How do I know that? Because what you guys do and what you've done for the thousands that you served, I benefited from that. And it saved my life. It shifted my life. It enhanced my life. I wasn't supposed to be a professional speaker. I grew up on the west side of Dayton, Ohio, in the hood. Many of the guys that I grew up with and girls I grew up with, they didn't make it. I lost probably over 15 friends before I was 18 to gun violence because I was gang affiliated and trying to stay out the way, trying to work a job, crazy stuff. And in the midst of all that, I kind of fall out of school. 8th grade, it was just kind of arduous. My mother was my foster mom. She got cancer and she ended up passing away. And I was left with my dad, my foster dad. And he had lost his first wife to the same cancer back in the early 60s. And so he kind of became an alcoholic and I became a juvenile delinquent. See, life sometimes gets in the way and sometimes life will put certain things on pause. Didn't mean that there was anything wrong with me. It was just life situation, life circumstance that we can't control. So the number one thing I would say when these people come into your presence, encourage them and say, it doesn't matter what you didn't accomplish. Together, we're going to accomplish the impossible. Together, we will do this. And I tell you, it made a world of difference, especially in my energy and in my shifting, okay, of how I thought about the rest of my life. What we do is really all about human connection. It's all about connecting to another human being. And I think with COVID, we've distance ourselves because we're behind computer screens and social distancing, and you go to the grocery store and if you get too close to someone, some people are just not having it. Get away from me, put your mask on. I mean, it's crazy out here right now. So everybody's kind of going crazy. But in the essence of when we inhale and exhale and we take a deep breath. And we remember that at the end of the day, it's about the connection to another human being. And that in the essence of what it is we do as adult educators and influencers and encouragers, we have the power not just to connect physically, but to connect spiritually, in a sense, emotionally, because it's all about the heart. The one thing Ms. Ritchie said in the video, if you picked it up, she says, I've always been for the underdog. And I fight for the underdog because I know what it means to be an underdog. I know what it means to be made fun of, to be laughed at because you don't have, or you're not smart, or all that stuff that goes on. I know what it's like, but I also know what it's like to be embraced, to be loved, to be believed in, to be looked at and said, you know what, you matter, you're important, you're not a mistake, you are significant. And that was the first thing that came to my mind when I met Miss Ritchie. I remember going to the 3rd grade and I ended up doing really, really bad. And we lived with my dad, had just moved to a town called Huber Heights, Ohio. And back in the 70s, man, if you can get a Huber home, it was amazing because it was made out of brick and it wasn't in a hood. So when my dad got a little raise on his job and he moved us out to Huber Heights, I mean, our house wasn't that big. I mean, it was a real small house, but it was real. And I had my own room and it was made out of brick and I had a backyard and it wasn't made out of mud, you know? And I remember going to that school system and it was a little arduous. And I just couldn't keep up. And I remember we go in to the counselor and the counselor says, Mr. and Mrs. Garrett, there's something wrong with your son. He's very introverted. He kind of stutters. He doesn't play well with other kids. Can you give us a backdrop on Mark Anthony? And I remember that my father started to tell him the story of, well, you know, Mark's mom had some problems. She was in her 20s and we were keeping foster kids. Mark was one of the kids who came through. We took a liking to him. We fell in love with him. We adopted him. And I remember that as I'm sitting there, the counselor looks at my mom and dad and says, Mr. Garrett, let me stop you. Did you say foster care? And my mother and father said yes. And I remember the counselor says, oh my goodness, now we truly understand why Mark isn't succeeding. He said, Mr. and Mrs. Garrett, I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm just letting you know because you don't really know his background, his record, or anything of that nature, you know, and because he's been in foster care and all that trauma, you really shouldn't expect too much from a kid like this. And the only problem with that is that my mother and father, they bought the hype. See, my dad was born in 1918, my mom was born in 1930. So they weren't really highly educated. So they just kind of believed what this guy said. And from that point, life shifted. And the next year I'm in special education. And I remember that I was devastated. I went to the homeroom and they had actually forgot I was supposed to go. So I go to my homeroom and I'm in there with like 30 other kids and we're laughing and joking. And over the loudspeaker, the principal comes on and he says, hey, all kids going to room 315, please go there now. Please show up to 315. All kids going to 315, please go there now. Well, we knew that 315 were for the kids that nobody wanted. We knew the 315 were for those kids that people would make fun of. And I knew that I was one of those kids and I was not going to expose myself. So I kind of laughed and joked with my buddies and stuff. And I remember the principal comes over the loudspeaker about 2 more times, asking those kids to report to 315. And I got my fingers crossed, my legs crossed, my eyes are crossed. I'm just hoping, please don't say my name. I do not want to be exposed. I do not want to be embarrassed. So about 45 minutes go by and he doesn't come over the loudspeaker. And I got my desk, I got my chair, and I'm just having a good time. And then the principal comes back over the speaker and he simply says, Mark Anthony Garrett, please go to room 315. Mark Anthony Garrett, please go there now. Well, when you talk about devastation and when you talk about being crushed, it was like all eyes were on me. And I was like one of probably 5 black kids in the whole school. So I'm just like, oh man, like really? And I remember the teachers look at their ledger and they're looking and they're looking and they're looking and they're like, we don't have any kids like that in our classroom. And then I remember one teacher, she pointed to my name. She pointed to the book and I was sure it was my name. And one of the teachers says, Mr. Garrett, no, she said, Mark Anthony, can you please get your belongings? Please do it expeditiously and please don't say anything. And I remember that the crowd was silent. The whole room was silent. I got up and I was crushed. I went to the back of the room. I got my little Land of the Lost lunchbox, my little Starsky and Hutch starter coat, my Evel Knievel hat, you know, and I'm ready to roll. And I remember as I'm going out the door, my good friend named Joey, he says, Garrett, he says, are you going down to that room? Or are you're really not going down there, are you? I said, oh, Joey, it's a mistake, bro. I mean, I don't know. They're tripping. I don't know what's going on. And he says, nah, man. He says, if you're going to 315, you know what that makes you? I'm like, what does it make me, Joey? He said, it makes you a retard. And I remember he starts singing, Mark is a retard. And he's getting the whole class involved, and the whole class is singing Mark is a retard about 5 times. And then after, as they went into the 6th verse, the teacher said, children, please settle down. And I remember I was crushed. And I remember that the aide came down to get me. And as I stepped out and made a left turn, I'm frustrated. I don't want to go down there. I ain't stupid. I ain't one of those kids. I'm not stupid. And tears are just coming down. I mean, they're coming down. And the counselor, she grabs my hand and she says, Mark Anthony, it doesn't matter where you are right now, young man. All that matters is where you are going. And it shifted something in me. And when it shifted something in me, it brought me back to where I was. I felt like I was a little kid again. See, this is the kid that they said nobody wanted. This was me. Actually, I don't know how old I am here, but I know that I was actually getting ready. They were prepping me to go to another foster home. And in that moment, I thought about my life. I was 8 at the moment. I thought about being a baby. Like, how did I get here? I'm only 8. Why is life so arduous? And I remember going into that classroom and I'm sitting down, and I remember Miss Ritchie comes into the classroom about maybe 3 minutes later, and she had this thing called energy. She walks into the classroom and she says, good morning, class. Oh my goodness, look at you. You're so beautiful. You're all so beautiful. We have a new kid named Mark Anthony. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You all are so beautiful. And I remember that she tells us, she says, I know outside this door it says 315. She says, but I don't teach special ed kids. I only teach children who happen to be special. And she said, this year is going to be something different. This year we will succeed. This year we will show all of them that we are not stupid. We will, when we march down the hall, we will march in a single line, and we'll do it so perfectly, we'll make all the other kids jealous. Whatever we do from this moment on, we will make them remember our names because we are significant. And man, it shifted something else. And all of a sudden I felt this like warm feeling go all over my body, and I'm seeing all the other kids, they're squirming around. And for the first time in our young life, we saw hope. The first time in our young life, we saw that maybe it was possible that we could achieve that higher level of greatness. But it's all about the energy. So what I want you to realize is that when you look at this picture, imagine if there were no people like you. Imagine if there were no Miss Ritchie. Imagine if all the people in my life that were there to influence me, what if they ceased to exist? I would be dead or in prison. I promise you that. I know that without a shadow of a doubt. But here I am. I'm nothing special. And I'm just sitting here sharing my life because you gave me permission to thrive. Miss Ritchie gave me permission to thrive. Miss Kavanaugh gave me permission to thrive. And it shifted my whole life. So from this picture on, this picture here, you know, another influence in my life was my foster dad. Now, the rumor is, now, I don't know if you can tell, he's a little bit slimmer than I am, but people say we look alike. I think this is my real dad. I don't know. But what I do know about my father who fought in World War II, my father was not the guy who would tell you he loved you. My father was not a huggy-feely guy. My dad was a blue-collar guy. He worked a factory. As a matter of fact, he made bowling balls for a living. That's what he did. I don't know how much you make making bowling balls, but the one thing that my dad always encouraged me, he said, Mark Anthony, you can do anything that you want to do. And my father dropped out of school in the 11th grade and never went back. And the one thing my father said, he said, Mark Anthony, whatever you do, he said, always get yourself educated. He said, it'll take you far in life. So God rest in peace. God bless you, Dad. Thank you for your encouragement. God bless you. But this is the lady that influenced it all. She was the catalyst. She was the first one who took a little broken child and said, you are significant. You can make this happen. You are important. And it shifted my whole life. And around this age here is when I really started trying to figure out what is my next move going to be, because at this age, I think I'm 13. And this is when my mother gets brain cancer. And a few months later, she dies. And here I am, this kid trying to figure out the rest of his life and trying to figure out where's he going to go? What's he going to do? How's he going to make it? Can you make it, Mark Art? Can you really do this? I didn't know, but I knew that I had to do something. But what I do remember at this age is everything Miss Ritchie taught me. All the belief, the inspiration, everything to be great was locked up inside of me. And I was just trying to figure it out. And as time went on, I was in gangs, involved in this, involved in that, until around the age of 18, I got involved in inner city theater and met a guy who got me a job working for the Division of Civilian Conservation. It's called the CCC. Now, understand, at this point, I still have no high school education and I still have no GED, but the opportunities are coming. The opportunities to be better and to be great are coming. And so I started working for this organization, and that's me back in the day, I think 1989, 90, with my good friends who's now Deputy Sheriff Milton Waters, and we're out there trying to figure it out. And right here, I'm trying to be the best I can, but I'm still thinking I need to get this high school equivalent, but I'm just trying to figure it out. And as a result of that, I left there and went to California, was on there participating in their backcountry trail program. And this here is at top of Mount Whitney. I think it's 14,377 feet. And I almost died getting to the top because my perception was Black people don't climb mountains. But my instructor, Carl McConey, says, you're going to climb it today, Black guy. And that's just how the relationship we was. So please don't take it personal. But he had the most incredible sense of humor. And he says, what do you mean the Black guy can't climb a mountain? Are you kidding? Are you kidding me? We're going to climb this mountain today. It took us 2 days to get to the top. But when I got to the top of the mountain, I remember I looked out the other way and I'm crying. I'm just crying frantically. And I'm asking myself, how does this inner city Black kid who nobody wanted, who was in gangs, who's an 8th grade dropout, how does he end up on top of a mountain? And as the wind was blowing, I could swear that I heard a voice say, because somebody told you that you could. The power of words, the power of influence, the power of what we can share in someone else's life is magnificent. And I never dreamed that I'd ever be able to do anything like I did, especially climb a mountain, but we did it anyway. That was my crew. Most of this crew, we were all broken. Some of these guys were in foster care. Large percentage of these individuals didn't have their high school education, as I didn't. But the one thing we had was the human connection. And we would sit out at night and we would talk about, one day we're going to get our high school education. We're going to college. We're going to be better than what we are now. And that's what kind of kept us going. And that was me. I would go out on expeditions by myself, climbing my own mountains, trying to reach my own peak. And I remember that when I came back from the conservation corps, I spent a few more months. And then my instructor, he says, hey, Mr. Garrett, let me talk to you for a minute. I said, yes, sir. So I walk into his office and he says, you ever thought about going to college? I said, no, sir. And he says, why not? He says, I said, because I'm an 8th grade dropout, sir. I'm not smart enough. And I remember he closed his door, grabbed me by my shirt and pushed me against the door. And he says, don't you ever tell me what you can't achieve. Don't you ever tell me what you can't do. Don't you ever tell me what you can't manifest in your life. You beaten the gangs, you beaten the drugs, you beaten the violence, you went out west to California, you've been here, you've achieved everything that you can, you've done excellent. I'm going to ask you one more time, young man, do you want to go to college? I said, yes, sir, but I don't have any money. I don't have a high school education, but they're not going to let me in. And he says to me, he says, I'm going to send you down to a school that is probably one of the greatest schools in America. It's in a great city and you're going to love it, but I want you to go tour it. And they sent me to Nelsonville, Ohio. Now, I don't know if any of you guys know about Nelsonville, Ohio, but I'm going to tell you something. It is country. That's all I can tell you. And I'm telling you this, I was a Black guy and I just watched Mississippi burning and they sent me down to the rural area and I'm in my mind, I'm just so negative. And I'm like, they're going to kill me. They're going to lynch me. I'm not going. And I remember my dad said, he said, son, let me tell you something. He says, you never let fear get in the way of your success. He says, sometimes, son, in order to get where you need to get, sometimes you have to go where you're never gone. He said, you got to go here. He says, you got to go and give it a shot. So I go down for this tour and they send us down from Dayton and I end up falling asleep, in the bus. And I wake up and we're on State Route 33. And they send us down to Hocking College during hunting season. Now, I haven't hunted anything in my life besides Easter eggs up to this point, right? So I wake up and I'm like, where are the buildings? There's no building, there's trees. And I see, these guys in pickup trucks with shotguns in the window. And I'm like, is this legal? Can you actually have a gun in your window? And I don't understand any of this stuff, right? And I'm seeing all these people with, numbers on their back, in bright orange. I'm thinking they're escaped convicts. I don't know. And then I see my first wild turkey. I'm like, did you see the size of that robin? He's like, no, Mark, it's a wild turkey, dude. So I go down to Hocking College and I get off the bus. And by mistake, I end up in the wildlife management group. I don't know how it happened. I don't know how I got in that group, but I think it was by design. I think it was destiny. But I fell in love with what they were talking about. And I says, I want to come here. So I went back to my counselor and I says, hey, I want to go there. He says, great, I'm going to give you a scholarship. He says, you've done a lot. You've earned it. He says, this is not a charity case. You've earned every bit of it. He says, but here's the thing. I'm going to send you down to Hocking College, but before you can graduate, you're going to have to get your GED. And I'm just like, what are you talking about? I got to do what? And so I went down to Hocking College and I got involved in the program. And I had to start at basic math. I mean, I had to start at rock bottom because remember, I got an 8th grade education. I was an excellent reader, excellent communicator, but I just didn't have the other stuff. And I remember that I would go to class, and then a few months later, I joined the GED program within Hocking College, and that's where I met Ms. Kavanaugh. And it from there, it shifted everything. And so, to make a long story short, finished Hocking College, 3 years, 2 years school, 3 years. Do the math. I'm telling you, I wasn't that bright. I had some catching up to do, but it took me 3 years to get through a 2-year degree and to get a GED. But guess what? Because of people like you, I did it. And it was the most exhilarating accomplishment other than marrying my wife and having my children that I've ever felt in my life, because I was able to achieve something that I thought was impossible. I wasn't supposed to do it. I didn't think that I was smart enough. I didn't think I had the juice to do this thing. But you guys believed in me. Ms. Kavanaugh, she believed in me. And I'm thinking back to Ms. Ritchie, those thoughts are playing on my mind. And I'm saying to myself, I can do this. And so after that, I got asked to come and speak to a group of individuals. It was AmeriCorps Vista. And I'm like, they said, can you come and speak on inspirational service? I'm like, sure. So I spoke and I got this epiphany that I wanted to not go into wildlife. I wanted to be a speaker. And so I go back and talk to my counselor and Ms. Kavanaugh. And I said, Ms. Kavanaugh, I says, I like wildlife and I like it, but I don't think I want to chase Bambi through the woods for the rest of my life. I says, I want to do something more. I want to help people. I want to change people's lives. And she says, well, son, you're going to need another degree. And so I shifted from Hocking College to Ohio University, and I studied interpersonal communication. And the rest is history. I started my business. And so I don't share this information with all of you to brag. I share this information with you to understand the journey. I was a kid who was born into a deficit. I was a kid who they said would never make it. I was a kid who was physically, mentally, sexually abused, 8th grade dropout, gangs, low self-esteem, contemplated suicide at 18. But I'm also a guy who's 52, who's sitting before you, presenting because people like you believe in a kid like me. I don't know what else to say. It's really just that simple. And as a result of what you do for others and what Ms. Kavanaugh did for me and Ms. Ritchie did for me, I started speaking. This is, of course, it's me and the governor. Actually, he asked me to come and speak at the Resiliency Summit, and I was really excited. And I sat down and had a chance to meet this great man and learn from him and be inspired by his philosophy, because he gave me a chance and he believed in me. And a lot of people say, well, Mark, you could never speak for the governor, but I didn't even ask for it. It's just through the work and through the diligence. He said, hey, would you come down and do some work for him? I said, yes, sir. And it was awesome. And I started speaking and hanging out with, some of the celebrities, this young lady from the show Blackish, and just going around the country doing things I never thought that I could do. These are some of my Dayton public school teachers. I just got done doing a conference, and it was just absolutely amazing. And then, as I started speaking, I started falling in love with kids. And I wanted to go back and inspire kids, the broken kids, the kids they said nobody wanted. So I started talking and going around the country, motivating and inspiring kids to be great, letting them know that no matter where you come from, you can achieve greatness. And I went into the prisons and to the juvenile detention centers, and I would talk to kids about the importance of getting their high school education and getting an education and being great in life. And as a result of that, I started speaking to more kids, and I started working with the younger kids. These are my I call them my 2nd grade babies. Love them to death. The only thing is there's no off button. They don't take a nap. It's on. They're on you. And for those, you know what I'm talking about. They're on you. But I fell in love with them because in them I saw myself. And I said that if I can hug all these kids and let them know that somebody believes in them, then maybe, just maybe by default, I can inspire someone the same way Ms. Kavanaugh inspired me and Ms. Ritchie inspired me. See how it works? Just helping these people get something that they never thought they could achieve, or life just kind of put a pause and they weren't able to get it. For them to get that, it may not mean a lot to society, but to them, it's everything. It will shift their consciousness and give them such a belief that it will change their whole life. I know that's what it did for me. And as a result, I started going around the country. I started mentoring kids. This kid from the hood, this kid who was an 8th grade dropout, who they said would never be anything. Now I'm hopefully inspiring kids to be great. And I'm mentoring kids, connecting with kids. And I remember this kid here, his name was Justin, and he comes up to me and I'm talking to this kid and he has tears in his eyes. You can't see that. And he says, Mr. Garrett, I've been bullied my whole life and they told me I'm not going to succeed. I'm here, but I feel invisible. You've given me hope. What advice would you have for me? And I looked him in his eyes and I'm telling him how important he is. I'm telling him how significant he is. I'm telling him that he has the power to transform his life and to reach any greatness that he has, can even conceive or dream. And I remember at the end of the conversation, me and this kid hugged and I held him for like a minute and this kid cried on my shoulder. And everybody's thousands of kids around. And all of a sudden, when we disembraced, all the other kids, they came and surrounded this kid and they hugged him and they said, we got you. You're one of us. You'll never feel alone again. And I'm crying, I'm frantic, and I'm thinking back, Miss Kavanaugh is responsible for this. Miss Ritchie is responsible for this. A GED instructor helped me to get to this point. This is amazing. So don't ever tell me, I can't tell you one that don't ever tell me, but I'm gonna say it, no, don't ever tell me what's not possible. Don't ever tell me that what you do, and I know sometimes you guys feel like I'm just, no, you're more than that. You are a lifesaver and a life shifter. Believe that. And the only thing I can say is I'm living that because you influence me. As I'm talking to this kid, I'm just sharing with him and believing in him and loving him and just letting him know that nothing's impossible. And I started working with kids that have IEPs and the kids that society says, you're not going to be anything, you can't achieve. But I started speaking life into these kids and helping them to understand that life is just a pit stop. But while we're here, we got to make the most of it. And just fell in love with these kids. Started doing a lot of work in rural areas, Tuscarawas County, Meigs County. I mean, all over the state of Ohio, going in rural areas where they say, don't go in that area, but I go anyway because I understand this is my purpose. So if something happens to me, then so be it. If that's the way it has to be, so be it. But I'm going to do what I'm designed to do because I owe it to two beautiful women who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself, who gave me the permission to breathe, who gave me the permission to thrive. It was an amazing, amazing journey. And as a result of that, I want you to understand this, that you weren't hired to maintain the status quo. You were hired to make a difference and an impact. Never forget this. So here's what I want to kind of share with you. And I want to kind of conclude this story with this. Miss Ritchie was the catalyst. She was the one who kind of sparked this thing inside of me, this fire to be more, to do more. And so, I got a call last year. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was April last year from Miss Ritchie's daughter. And I hadn't seen Miss Ritchie in many a year. And we had kind of met probably 15 years after that. And I kind of reunited with her, reconnected. And with the video that you saw, we had a film crew there. But I had actually met her about 3 months prior to that for the first time in many years since I'd been in the 3rd grade. So I get this call from her daughter, and her daughter is a former educator like all of you are. And she says, Mark Anthony, how are you? I says, I'm great. I says, how's the queen? And she says, well, the queen isn't doing so well. I need you to come down. And she's in hospice. Come down to Yellow Springs. We're going to be saying our goodbyes. That was on, I think, it was April 14th. I couldn't make it down there until the 17th. I was going to go on the 18th, but something said go on the 17th. So I go down, call her, and I show up. And all of her kids are there. And I walk into the facility and she says, Mark Anthony, she said, thank you so much for coming. She says, are you ready? I says, I think so. So we walk into this room and there's Miss Ritchie laying there. A shell and a fraction of the woman that I knew, unresponsive, laying there, ventilators on her. And I'm looking at her. And all of a sudden I got this overwhelming feeling of gratitude, of understanding that here lies a woman who, without her, I wouldn't be here. And I'm like, what do you say to the woman that saved your life, who shifted your life through education? What do you say to a woman like, what do you say at this moment? And I remember I walk over to her, right? And I grab her hand and I put my hand over her hand. I lean down and I'm whispering to her. And I told her, I said, Miss Ritchie, I love you. I said, it's Mark Anthony. I said, I want to thank you so much for everything that you've done for me. I'm a speaker. I travel all over the world. I'm trying to influence kids. I'm trying to be that good citizen that you taught us to be when we were in the third grade. I'm trying to live up to the expectation that you said that all of us had that we should have for ourselves. I'm trying to earn this thing called life. But without you, Miss Ritchie, there would be no me. I thank you and I love you. And I remember I went down and I kissed her on her forehead, and the tears were just coming. And I said, Miss Ritchie, I says, I can't come with you right now, but I will see you one day again. And I said, I want you to have a safe journey home. I love you so much. And I had to leave out the room. I was done. So I walk out the room. I'm done. Everybody in the room is just crying, and I'm just frantic. But when I walked out that room, I'm standing there and I'm thinking about all the things and all the conversations that she had with me. I thought about Miss Kavanaugh and the other instructors I had in my life who believed in me, who said that I was not a mistake and that I could be something. And I remember I had this gratitude, and I remember her daughter comes back out and says, Mark Anthony, it's time. You want to say something else? And I say, yes. So I go back in and I look at her again. And I remember I grabbed both her hands, and I'm talking to her, and I said, Miss Ritchie, I love you. It's Mark Anthony. I says, I love you. I love you. I love you. I promise you that I will earn this, that everything you instilled in me, I will live to the end of my life, making sure that I live up to the expectation that you had for me. I love you. And I kissed her. Now, what happened next just blew me away. Her chest goes up. Goes up again, down, up, and down. And that was it. And everybody in the room, we're done. But what her daughter said to me, Janice said, Mark Anthony, you have no idea what you've done for this family. And I'm thinking to myself, what I've done for this family? No, you got it twisted, sister. It's what your mama did for me. I owe her everything. And she says, no, Mark Anthony, you don't understand. You don't understand. Because see, I told mommy about you. I told mommy that Mark Anthony was coming. I've been telling her that you were coming, Mark Anthony. Mommy, she waited for you. Mommy waited for you, Mark Anthony. Thank you. I was done. And I stood there in that moment. And I thought to myself, this is what legacy is all about. This is why we're here. This is what we're supposed to be doing. This is how it's supposed to be done. And I felt so honored because at the beginning of my little 8-year-old life, she was there for me and gave me the fuel that I needed to send me to the moon. And at the end of her life, we recircled, and I was there to see her last breath. So I say that to say this. All of you who are on this call, who are under the sound of my voice, you're important. You are significant. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for what you do, for your service, for your love, for your diligence, for your resiliency. But I also want to thank you for your presence, for showing up in this thing called life. You are amazing. And when you understand that you are amazing, and when you understand that you are here for something bigger, you're here for 3 P's: purpose, passion, and presence. To understand the reason that you have been gifted this thing called life, to walk in purpose, is an amazing thing. And then when you can take that purpose that you've been aligned with from the Creator, and then you can then walk with passion and understand that your presence on this planet at this point is by design and it is needed, and that you're here to influence somebody. Everybody needs somebody. And those students who are coming to you and those students who have yet to come to you, they need you. They don't even know it, but they need everything that you have. So I want you to think of yourself a little bit different. I want you to think of yourself as more than just an adult, educate. No, you're more than that. You are a lifesaver. You are a life shifter. You are an influencer. You are amazing. So I'm going to end with this last slide and ask you all to do something. I'm going to ask you to do something today that your future self will thank you for. Find one person and tell them you love them. Give somebody a hug. Do something that's going to make you proud. I want to thank all of you for your diligence. I want to thank you for taking the time out to listen to me today. I want to thank you just for being who you are. I want to thank the association for allowing me to speak to you. I hope this has been beneficial. I hope that I've been able to serve you. But more importantly, I believe that if we continue doing this work together, if we continue fighting for the underdog, we can change lives, one life at a time. This has been a pleasure for me. God bless all of you. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Thank you so much for the opportunity. God bless. Thanks a lot, folks. Okay, I have stopped the share.
I'm glad I get to go back on camera after, crying at the end of that. Thank you so much,
welcome.
Mark Anthony, for sharing. I'm sure everyone here feels the same way. Like this year it's been rough because we've had to really change how we serve our students. And I know sometimes I doubt, that what we're doing is working because it's not normal anymore. But having that reminder from you that what we do is important, and we'll shift with our students, and we'll continue to do what we need to do because what we do does matter. But thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I appreciate Karen Carnes's words in there, that these words were apples of gold today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, it was a beautiful, inspirational message on our Friday. So thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, so we are up to our break time. We're going to leave the